Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
And welcome to Tash Talks Film. How I like to start all of my podcasts, I either start by asking my guests what part of Houston they're from, or I like to start with a little backstory about how I met them. So I'll go ahead and start with how I met you, which was at First Thursdays. The energy is always so high at First Thursdays. There's always a lot of people buzzing around after all the films are done being screened, and people are just meeting new people and things like that. And so I launched this podcast in late October, and I was like putting together my list of guests that I would want to have on. And you were at the top of my list. So I'm happy that you cleared your schedule to be able to come on today.
Yeah, thank you for going to First Thursdays and happy to be here.
What part of Houston are you from? Let's start there.
I am a native Houstonian, third generation Houstonian, and I grew up near the Friendswood area, so south of town. I grew up in that area, a neighborhood called Sagemont, and I was in the Pasadena School District. So kind of that area. I grew up down there, but when I was after my sophomore year in high school, my family moved to the city, right near downtown, and I've been living in the near town ever since. And so I consider myself being from close to town. I live in the Heights. I've lived in the Heights for a long time. And so right out just northwest of downtown. But I grew up in the Friendswood area. So I know Houston very well from having lived here my whole life and doing location scouting for films and TV. I know, even though it's a very, very big place, I know the city very well.
Have you ever lived anywhere else other than Houston, or have you been here your whole life?
I have not. I have worked briefly in some other markets, but mostly my career and my life has been Houston. I joke that I love two things. I love film production and Houston. So those are two things that are top of my list of things that I love.
Well, then you're the perfect guest because we're going to talk about both of those two things heavily today.
Perfect.
Before we get into your work at the Houston Film Commission, I like to start off just a little bit of like your early career. Your film career began in the early 90s. You did some freelance crew member work. Do you have maybe like a favorite memory or just anything that maybe comes top of mind from some of the films that you've worked on?
Yeah, in the early 90s, let me back up a little bit. When I was in high school, I was always drawn to visual arts and visual communication. The person that got me started in that was my uncle. He put a camera in my hand when I was a teenager and taught me photography. That's what he did for a living. He was a photographer and journalism and some other things, but he taught me how to he taught me composition. He taught me how to develop my own negatives and print my own pictures, all these things. So I was really drawn to that in high school. And when I was in high school, I was offered a one semester filmmaking class that would get me out of taking drama. And so I took this one semester filmmaking class just to get out of taking drama because I knew I'm not an actor. I wasn't an actor, but I was drawn toward the filmmaking process already. And so I took this one class and I'm getting to a point of how I got into film, but the woman who taught this filmmaking class in high school as a one semester special class, years later, I went to university, and when I was at University of Houston, during the summer, one day I came home and there was a movie being filmed on my street. They leave a note on the neighbors' fences saying that we're filming a movie at the corner. If you'd like to come down and watch, you can stand on the corner between these hours and watch. And it had a name at the bottom, and I recognized the name as that teacher who taught me the filmmaking class 3.5 years earlier.
Uh-huh.
And so I took the note and I walked down to the corner and I was going to ask for her to say hi because I enjoyed the filmmaking class and we had visited during the class and all that. She had a very unique name. And so I asked for her. And so I asked a production assistant if she was around. They called her on the walkie-talkie and she came walking up. And almost as soon as she walked up and almost as soon as I said hi, she said, "Do you want to work on this film?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And I had no idea. And then she said, "Call this number or go to this address, tell them I sent you, and you can be a production assistant." And that's how I got started in film. Since that
Wow.
day, since that day, I never did anything else in my life except help people make films and work on films. I did what you
Wow.
hear of film people doing when you start off on the first rung of the ladder as being a production assistant. So I was an office production assistant on that film in the summer, and I met people, and then I started getting other jobs on commercials and other types of film production. Then I kind of worked my way through the filmmaking hierarchy, office production assistant, production office coordinator, production coordinator, then eventually production manager, and then moved myself into the locations department. So I did location scouting, assistant location manager, then location manager on projects around the Houston area. And most of these projects in the Houston area, almost all of them, I worked on a movie in Austin once, and then some commercials and around the outskirts of Houston and things. But most of my production work I did in Houston. So I did work on movies in the early 90s, like Powder was one of them. A lot of people are surprised to know that film was made around here because we don't show Houston at all. It's all the small towns around Houston. I worked on Reality Bites, which is a very Houston movie based on University of Houston graduates and their lives. I worked on the movie Apollo 13. That's probably my biggest credit, where I was assistant production office coordinator, but they filmed all the weightlessness scenes here in Houston. And this year, 2025, amazingly marks the 30th anniversary of when Apollo 13 movie came out in theaters. And it's amazing it's been that long, but it has been that long. How's that?
You made my job easy for me.
Okay.
What was the role at the Houston Film Commission?
When I first started, the position they were looking for was location coordinator.
Okay.
Because a big part of what film commissions do, and this is still a big part of what we do, is location scouting. We have a photo database on our website and a private photo database that we use to share photos of the Houston area with producers to entice them to film in the Houston area. And by having an extensive photo database of almost anything you can imagine in the city, from we have scouted farms, ranch land. I've been on most of the rooftops of the buildings in downtown. We've scouted just almost everything you can imagine that a film production might need to show on camera in the Houston area. So we are always location scouting a lot of aspects of the production process on how it works and how you put films together, how you help people find what they need to make movies, locations, crew, equipment, all those things. And that's where, after working on many movies and projects, someone mentioned that there's an opening at the Film Commission. I really didn't understand fully what a film commission was or what they did, but I applied for it and I got the job, and that's how I ended up here for unique locations that we can share with producers. But at that time when I first started, that was the primary position, was location coordinator. Because back then we actually took photographs on actual film. We had to take them to it wasn't CVS at the time, it was Eckerd Drugs store
I
and get
remember that.
Eckerd Drugs, are right, to get the photos printed in 1 hour, and then we would put them together and usually FedEx them out to a producer who's waiting on those photos to see what we have to offer. And so it was a laborious process many years ago. And now technology is it's great. We have high res photos that we can share in private email photo packages. It's same day, sometimes within the hour. An example of a project we helped even in the last couple of years was a producer called from Canada in the winter, December, early December, and they were going to do a lawn fertilizer commercial. And I said, I'm going out to lunch. I'll take photos of neighborhoods, send them to you. And this is from my iPhone. I just sent him photos from my iPhone. By the time I got back to the office from lunch, he says, okay, we already booked flights. We're coming down to Houston to shoot this commercial like next week. And I was like, one of the
Wow.
faster projects, but sometimes production can move that fast. But what they needed, because they were from Canada, they needed pretty houses with pretty green lawns. And we still have that here in Houston in early December. So as much as we can complain about the summers, the winters are pretty mild usually, and we have
Mhm.
green trees and green grass through December, because really January and February are colder months, and December is still pretty green here in Houston.
How old were you when you got that job? Just hearing you talk about like your early days up until getting that job as location coordinator at the Houston Film Commission, it sounds like a dream. Like this really was made for you because it sounded like everything just fell into place.
At the time, I didn't know that what I didn't know it was my dream job. I had worked happily as a freelance person working in film, because when I first started the Film Commission, again, I didn't know everything it entailed, but it did involve initially doing what I had been doing freelance anyway, which is going out and location scouting and finding things what producers need. Only it was a steady job doing that, but I didn't know the other aspects of it, which is more so it's finding locations, crew, equipment, helping producers cut red tape with the city, with the county, making sure that productions have a successful shoot in the greater Houston area. And then we have the other things that actually First Thursdays is something I started after being here for a number of years because of another program that we had put together, an annual collection of Texas-made short films. But I told myself when I first started coming from the freelance world that I'll stay at the Film Commission maybe 2 or 3 years. And, I had a freelance mentality for sure. I said, I'll stay there for 2 or 3 years, see what it's about, and do that for just that long, and then maybe go back to working on movies. But I did fall in love with it. Now, when I first started, we were a 3-person office. And so it was our executive director, and then me, the location coordinator, and then our office administrator, Jessica. And we were 3 people in our office for a long time. Now, things changed in the last 5 years because of the pandemic, the last 4 years. Our executive director retired in early 2021. Again, the pandemic threw everyone for a loop, right? After that, we had to furlough our office and then come back after a little while. But then our executive director, who had been here a long time as well, decided to retire in early 2021. And then months later, I moved up to the position of executive director. So I've only been in charge of our office for about actually, right, exactly 4 years now. I think April 21 is when it became official. So now I'm the executive director of our office, and now we're just a 2-person office. It's myself and Monica that we certainly keep busy with the things we do, helping projects and producers find what they need in the greater Houston area. And we both kind of share duties of location scouting and working with different projects and all the things that we do. Again, as a 2-person office for a large city, we definitely keep busy.
That's what I was going to ask. When you said initially you started as a 3-person team, so I was expecting you to say that you guys had maybe expanded, but you've shrunk.
We have shrunk. At one point, we were 4 people. And then actually pre-pandemic, I think maybe for just a brief time, we were 5 people. So we have shrunk in staff, but again, we have streamlined our processes. And I'm not saying we couldn't use another person. That would be certainly nice to have somebody scouting full time, what I did in the beginning. But again, with our technology being a little bit better and a little bit faster and all these things, it is a little bit better. With our mobile devices, we're on Teams all day long, and it doesn't matter what industry it does, but a lot of industries have remote workers, and we can work out in
Yes.
the field with the technology we have. And so it's a little bit more streamlined, and we're getting by right now. But the goal is always, or as I say, there can never be enough or too much production going on in our area. That's the whole goal. It's to have plenty of production going on where not only are our veteran film crew working, but there's opportunities for new people to get started as well.
That makes for a good segue. A big part of your role is advocating for jobs and opportunities for crew members and just filmmakers in general to bring more jobs to the
Mhm.
Texas film industry. I saw recently that you went to Austin, you went to the Capitol to advocate. Can you expand a little bit on that, some of your advocacy work for the Texas film industry?
Sure. And I'm going to back up a little bit. I will talk about that, but I want to
Okay.
fully explain who the Houston Film Commission is, how we are
Yes.
structured, who we work for, and how we operate, because sometimes people do have a misconception of our office because it's called Houston Film Commission. I actually work for a company called Houston First Corporation. And Houston First Corporation is the destination marketing organization on behalf of the city of Houston. Our office is not a city department. We are part of Houston First Corporation, which is a standalone local government corporation that exists for economic development purposes, meaning that everyone that works for Houston First Corporation, me and Monica included, which are the Houston Film Commission, We work for that company where we are charged with marketing and promoting Houston as a destination in the way of production. The other people that work for Houston Forest Corporation, everybody, our bottom line is promote and market Houston to bring people here so they can be tourists or be conventioners or whatever the case may be, visiting a sports event, things like that. Our bottom line is to bring visitors to the city of Houston so they can stay in hotels. And so when people stay in hotels, they pay what we call for short the hot tax, the hotel occupancy tax. And so how that tax is broken up into three parts. Parts of it goes to the state of Texas, part of it goes to Harris County, and part of it goes to the city of Houston. So once a year, our company, Houston First Corporation, gets only a portion of the city portion of the hotel tax to operate. So we are supported by the visitors to the city of Houston, not by the residents of the city of Houston. The city of Houston, the city raises money by property taxes, sales taxes, speeding tickets, things like that. We get our revenue from the visitors to the city of Houston and operating some venues around town like the Convention Center Hotel, the Hilton Americas, Jones Hall, Wortham Theater, a number of properties that are under
Interesting.
our company operates those larger arts facilities on behalf of the city of Houston. So we're an operations company as well because operating the George R. Brown Convention Center, the Hilton Hotel, Wortham Theater, Jones Hall, and a number of other ones. So we do get revenues from those processes as well, or those properties, I should say. So we're an operations company in addition to a company that markets and promotes Houston as a destination. All that being said, your question was, how do we advocate, or I guess, why do we advocate? I went to Austin recently, yes, to testify to the Senate panel that submitted a bill, which would be a great bill to have passed on behalf of the motion picture industry because our incentive program on the state level was started in 2007. And
Hmm.
since then, what we've had to do is every other year when our state makes laws is educate our representatives in Austin on what we are up against with the other states that have aggressive incentive programs. And every other year, when they have funded the state incentive program, the amount they give it has fluctuated wildly. And so some years it was 40 million split over 2 years. At one time, it was 92 million split over 2 years to use so the Texas Film Commission can use as incentive money to lure production to the state of Texas. Now, the new bill, a major thing with the new bill is the amount of money they're willing to commit to it, which is 500 million split over 2 years. But the even bigger thing is that they are committing to, or at least in this bill, they will be committing to that amount for up to a 10-year period. And um, that will make a great incentive program compared to these other states that have really aggressive incentive programs. If we have a stable incentive for that amount of time, that will absolutely get noticed by studio level projects that Georgia's getting, that Louisiana's getting, New Mexico's getting, that we have been missing out on
Hmm.
when our state has been out of incentive money or we didn't have enough incentive money or something like that. So it's important to advocate on behalf of the most robust incentive program that we can get to compete with those other places. I speak to friends who are crew people in those other states working on projects, and it's a regular lament that crew people would love to work at home where they're from or have never had the need to leave in the first place to work on films, and
Yeah.
that's the goal too. But we did have a slightly above average year last year in film production in the Houston area because we had the Netflix series Mo in the spring filming a year ago. And then we had a week of Taylor Sheridan shooting in Galveston, which brought in quite a bit of production there. And then we had a couple of few independent films that filmed throughout last year as well. And then, of course, here in Houston, a lot of crew people, their bread and butter is commercials. So there's a regular commercial market and then corporate video market, things like that. And what's
Like
amazing too,
industrial type stuff that I
industrial
see.
type stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what's incredible too is that it's amazing, our market, Houston, how much people spend on wedding videos. It's like a big industry as well. There's one company that I've been told, and by crew people, that some people spend between 60,000, $100,000 just on their wedding video,
My
and
goodness.
yeah, it's pretty amazing. But they do they're
Crazy.
very cinematic, and they look like mini movies, and they're pretty impressive. But if someone is willing to spend that amount of money, they are getting a mini movie, basically.
I can imagine. I want to back up a little bit.
Yeah.
When you mentioned the $500 million tax incentive, and
Mm.
I think you said it was over the course of 2 years, but you want to have that for
Oh, I'm
10
sorry.
years or
The way the bill's proposed, it will be effective for 10 years.
okay, it would
10.
be effective for 10 years.
Yes, yes. If it passes, yeah, which would be amazing. Yes.
So that total amount of money would be just for the course of
It,
those 10 years.
no, I apologize. So it's 500 million split over 2 years for
Uh-huh.
every for up for 10
For 10
years.
years.
So
Okay.
yeah, so every 2 years, 500 million will be allocated for a
Okay.
10-year span. So
Gotcha.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, which is five legislative sessions, which would be 10 years, exactly through 2035.
Nice.
Yes, and that would be amazing. Yes.
I follow you on your socials, your LinkedIn and Instagram, and I see that you do a lot of traveling to film festivals.
Mhm.
I'm curious, what is your role at the film festivals? Are you doing more advocacy work or kind of speaking to
Right.
filmmakers? Tell me, like, what do you do when you go there?
Yeah, amazingly, that's one thing I learned when I got here is that a lot of our marketing and promotion, or actually all of it, I should say, is out of town, outside of our area. Because again, everyone that works for our parent company, Houston First and Visit Houston, our job is to bring people here from other places. And
Hmm.
so we have a marketing budget for the Film Commission, but we do not spend $1 on marketing here in Houston. And the reason is because our marketing budget, we spend it in Los Angeles, New York, Europe, places where we've gotten productions to come here before, because that's what we do. Our job is not to market to ourselves here in Houston. We market outside of our areas to bring people to Houston. And so the reason I go to these film festivals is to, yes, meet people, meet directors, meet producers, meet filmmakers, and let them know that, yeah, consider Houston as a filmmaking location and meeting them. I do go to conferences all throughout the year because that's a big part of what we do. We have a tourism department where the people that work in the tourism department are traveling all the time to different countries promoting Houston. And it's the same thing. In a film market, I travel to these different film festivals in different markets to promote Houston as a film production destination. So it's a similar thing. And some of the things we have been to and go to are production conferences. And like last year, I went to NAB in Las Vegas and certainly met plenty of people to promote Houston. Sometimes I am on panels talking about locations, whether it's as a domestic market or an international market, something like that. And so whenever I have opportunities, of course, that's a primary thing to do, but also going to professional or organization events, right? In what we do, our primary contacts or our primary the people that we need to meet to promote Houston as a production destination are primarily producers and location managers. And so
Hmm.
I attend events where these two professions congregate. So I go to the Produce By conference in Los Angeles. I go to anything where there are producers congregating. And then also the last 3 years, we've been participating in the Location Managers Guild International awards, and so I attend that in Los Angeles because it's all the top location managers in the world in one place, and I get to promote Houston to them. And so these are things. What I want to do is meet filmmakers and have them think about Houston, whereas they may have never thought about Houston before as a production destination. And so we want to be in touch with them, follow up with them, send them location photos, and say, be surprised of what Houston has to offer within a 60-mile radius as far as locations. And then also we have a crew base here that they can take advantage of. Of course, Houston being the fourth largest city in the country, it's amazing to me. And sometimes I forget that there are 70 direct flights to 70 different countries from Houston, right? It's really an amazing place to live because you can take direct flights to almost anywhere in the world. And that's pretty phenomenal. We do live in an amazing city. And, but again, it's beneficial to some producers because I know that if you are in a smaller market, sometimes you have to go through Houston to get to wherever you're going anyway, right?
Hmm.
Plenty of Austin filmmakers who have told me they have to come to Houston first and then fly wherever they're going to, and in the reverse as well, right? And then even in other states, if it's smaller markets, you have to fly through Houston a lot to get to where you're going. And so we are a major international hub, which makes it easier on producers getting in and out of Houston for sure.